Hi, my name is Dylan. I am going to start some videos for my blog, The Biased Observer, which I started after some Facebook discussions that ended up with the question, can you in fact tell a story without bias? And the answer is no. Everyone has a bias, but I think that the problem is that some people aren't upfront about theirs. So let's be real. I'm a communist, and that's the basic framework for all of my analysis of everything that I will be discussing in these videos. It's also important to know that I'm a member of Fight Imperialism, Stand Together, or FIST. FIST is really important to me because that's kind of the organization through which I put my politics into practice. I want to talk about cops. This has actually caused a lot of arguments on my Facebook, especially when I posted a status that said, no such thing as a good cop. I believe fully that the role of cops in the state is the reason we should condemn them as a group. I don't believe in individualizing this situation. People who want to defend cops tend to say things like, well, it's their job to protect us. It's also worth noting that these people tend to also be white or white passing, and that is no coincidence. But basically, this idea that cops are here to protect is about as useful to a real understanding of the role of cops and how that affects people's daily lives as, say, a fairy tale would be. And cops are part of the state, or the apparatus used by the government to oppress people. The state also includes the courts, the prison system, the military, etc. These are all part of a structure that is set up to oppress the working class, and that is done through creating things like racism and violence. Therefore, cops who do their jobs are inherently serving an oppressive, racist, violent agenda. And if we understand this, it actually makes all of the stories that we hear about police brutality, police murdering unarmed people of color or other oppressed people, it makes it make more sense. To put it frankly, these cops are just doing their job. And thinking about things like this is why I posted once on Facebook a status that said, no such thing as a good cop. And certain people lost their shit. The people who immediately disagreed with this status started posting story after story about these good cops that they knew, many of whom were their family members. So to counter this, I explained, as I did earlier, the role of the police within the state and silence. None of these people who were disagreeing with me wanted to accept that or even challenge it. Like, they just said nothing about it. But when I used that in order to justify condemning all cops, I was accused of generalizing. So basically, these people were making a not all cops argument. So none of these people who were disagreeing with me could touch my analysis about why all cops were bad. They just didn't like the fact that I was saying all cops were bad because they knew a man or a woman who was not a bad cop. Some of these people even agreed that cops are working within a corrupt system that is violent, but all they could do was sling anecdotes out of some need to protect their worldview or whatever was going on. And so those stories were the only things that they had to back up their arguments. The problem with anecdotal evidence is that it distracts from the fact that police brutality is a systematic problem that serves the needs of the ruling class. Just because you have an example of one good police person doesn't change the fact that they are still choosing to work in a profession that is intended to keep oppressed peoples down. In fact, I said this on Facebook, that if these so-called good cops ever came to the attention of the ruling class and their actions were viewed as a threat, more likely than not, they would have to either choose to take on a more violent agenda that was more in line with what the ruling class wanted, or they would just stop being a cop. There really isn't another way, and that's exactly why I feel safe in saying there's no such thing as a good cop.